Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful Independence Day, Lord, and I just ask that a special blessing on our veterans today as we remember this holiday and the things that were fought for the freedom that we have, Lord, and ultimately that freedom comes from you, Lord. Lord, I just ask for these kids today that you give them the courage and the boldness to come up here and speak clearly and tell everyone about their trip. God, it was cool to see you work in these kids' lives, and I'm excited for them to tell the church what they learned. Thank you for today. In your name I pray. Amen. Who's first? Griffin's kicking it off.
All right, so as you know, we had a hard time getting there, but I think we're going to talk about that. I think somebody else is going to talk about that. So when we got there a little bit late. We were supposed to get there Sunday, but we actually got there really early Monday morning. So we didn't get a complete tour of the place, so we just went there and then went to sleep because it was late. When we got up, went to breakfast, because every morning we didn't know this yet, but we were supposed to go up and they gave us these little books, and then they had like devotionals in them and stuff, and we'd follow along throughout the trip. We were supposed to do our devotionals, but we didn't know yet because we got there late. So we got up, went to breakfast around, I think it was 8 o'clock. And then he gave us, kind of like pointed out like a tour of the place, like, oh, that's what that is and that's what that is and stuff. Then we went up to, we got all of our luggage and they took it up to Jungle Camp, which is what it was called. It was up there, up the hill a little ways. And it had like cabins where you'd sleep in the night and stuff. So he took us up there. We didn't sleep there the first night. We just slept in by the buildings. But then we went up there. Then we had, then next we had our Bible and theme session. So that was from 8:45 till 12 o'clock. So that was the Bible session. That one was more about, I think we were going through Genesis, some things in Genesis. So that was more about like Bible related. And then the theme session was about like missionary stuff. So like I think Monday was about culture. So we went through stuff like that. And then we had two speakers, Greg and Steve, and they're both missionaries. And then they'd always tell us stories and tell us different stuff that they did when they were doing missionary work. And then after that, we went to lunch at 12 o'clock. And then we had, in between all this stuff, there's time in between. They had tons of fun games and stuff. Like they had a ball pit, a 9-square thing, so you could play that in your free time and stuff. So we had lunch. All the food was really good. I was worried the food wasn't gonna be good because I'm kind of picky, but it was actually kind of good. And then at 1:30 we did activities. So we have kind of like a big activity. So like every cabin had a different name, and then they'd pair up cabins. We got paired with our cabin because we got split, all the boys in one cabin, all the girls in another cabin. But our church got paired for most of the group, so that was good. So for activities, one day we went hiking, another day we went swimming, and we did some other stuff. But if other kids are gonna do it, we don't want to ruin the surprise. So we did some other stuff too. Then that took a while. That was kind of like the main thing of the day. And then at 6 o'clock we had dinner. Then we had some more free time. And then 7 o'clock we had small groups. So they had a couple of interns from the Bible school, Ethnos 360 Bible School. So some of those interns came and they gave their testimonies. So we broke off into groups, and then they'd give us their testimony. And each day we'd get a different intern. So that was that. And then 8 o'clock we had fireside meeting. So up there by all the cabins they had like a half circle of logs and a fire pit and a podium and whatever, so they could speak. And during that we were going through like Jonah, so just going into depth about Jonah, and he was always telling us stories about about missionary stuff and a bunch of fun stories that he had. Then after that we kind of had a break, and it was about 10 o'clock we all went to our cabins, and then the next morning we'd get up and do our devotionals because he told us all about it and stuff. But so that was basically one day. It was about the same every day, just different stuff. Thank you.
Okay, I'm supposed to talk about traveling. So we departed here about like 8:30. We said our goodbyes, took pictures, yeah. We drove to Boise. Most of us just slept in the cars. Some people were singing and it was kind of annoying, but you know. Once we got to the airport, we went through security and then we boarded the plane, but there was a storm in Chicago, so we got delayed 3 hours. And so it was a little bit of a trip. Okay, so we finally left the airport in Boise at 3:30 and we got to Chicago around 7:30. But we missed our plane, so we got stranded in Chicago. We tried to find another flight out, but they said we wouldn't get it till Monday, and they didn't want us to miss the camp, so we just flew to Florida. And while we were stuck in the Chicago airport, some of us were being a little not too good. Some of the boys were just going up the, what's it called, those thingies. And then some of us were wheelchair racing, and some cops talked to us. They just told us the homeless people were too dangerous for us, so. Oh yeah, they took a picture of Joaquin too, because he looked kind of messed up in the wheelchair, so. Okay, once we got to Florida, we had a couple hours of layover, so most of us just fell asleep and just did what we did. And then Ginge got us food because most of us were saying we were hungry and stuff. We talked to some boarding attendants and they were pretty friendly. I liked the Florida people a lot. And then we were about to board our plane and then another thunderstorm came. So another bit of waiting. So, yeah. Then we finally got on that plane and we made it to Virginia, and there we got on a little bus thingy to take us to the rental car place where we met up with Raleigh, Jordan, and then Greg and Ginge. So we drove the rest of the 3 hours after we got food and stuff, and then we finally got there at 1 o'clock that night. And so they just sent us to one of their cabins, and the boys were in one room and the girls were in another, and then we just did our prayer at night, and then just went to bed, took showers and stuff. And then while we were in the Chicago airport again, most of the kids wouldn't go to sleep because they weren't tired because of all the planes. So they were just running around and stuff. People were dragging my sleeping bag all around the airport, but we were good. And then our day started at 4 a.m. We had to go through security. Then we were waiting in the boarding place. And then Ginge got us breakfast, of course. And then, don't worry, we made friends in the airports. It was pretty fun. I made a friend, he was a pilot, and some other girl that was from just Florida, Pretty nice people. Okay, I think that's all though.
So we left on Saturday in the morning, and we were supposed to get there at night, but we got delayed and got there Sunday. So on Monday, we woke up and got our breakfast, and then we went to Bible hour. And after, we just had a break, and then went to our Bible lesson, and after that, we went and had lunch, and then on Monday, we had a village, so we won't talk about that. But then after that, we had the fire and the camp night session, and then we just went to bed. So on Tuesday, we got up and did our devos, and then went and got breakfast, and then did Bible hour. And then we had some free time, and then went to our Bible session. Then we did our airplane experience, and then we went swimming, then had dinner and intern testimonies, and the night lesson and fire, and then we went to bed. Then on Wednesday, we woke up and did our devotionals. Then we ate and had free time, then did Bible hour. Then we had a free time, then we did our lesson, then lunch, and then we went for a hike. Then we did dinner and the intern testimonies, then the campfire session, and then we went to bed. Then on Thursday, we woke up and did our devotionals. We got breakfast and free time, and we did our Bible hour. Then we had a break and did Bible session. Then we had lunch and we did a teamwork exercise. And then we went back and had dinner. Then we went to the fire and everyone shared if they wanted to. And that's it.
Oh, there's a lot of you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about devotionals or devos. So in the mornings, we would wake up super early, like 5, 6 o'clock, I can't remember. And we would, what did we do? We went to the tab, that's what it was called. We went to the tab, and then we had our books that they gave us in bags, I guess. And what we did is we would fill them out. We would choose like a people group. We'd have to find out where they lived. I can't remember if we had to figure out what they believed and what we would pray for them. We would do that every morning, and it was a bunch of fun.
So I'm going to talk about Monday, or our first day at Wyoming. After all of our travels and going through all the airports, I'm never flying again. That was horrible. We didn't make it there till about midnight or 1, and so we all just fell asleep. And they woke us up at 6, which I thought was super early, but it's okay. And we just went out to where all the games were in the main area where we all kind of hung out and got to know everyone. And we just waited for breakfast at 8. And when all the other kids started to come down, it was kind of funny because we would all go and we'd play games together, and they'd come up to us and be like, "Are you the guys from Idaho?" Or they'd be like, "You guys are the ones that didn't get here on Sunday, huh?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's us." So they had a whole bunch of questions about our flights and stuff like that. And after that, so we had breakfast, and after that we got to meet a lot of our camp staff. So Isaac and his wife Leah were our camp game coordinators, or they just kind of like ran everything. And then Greg and Steve were the one that taught our group sessions and lessons, and they were the missionaries, so they just kind of told us about what they did when they were in the mission field. And then we had our camp interns, and their names were Grace, Hannah, Sophia, Lincoln, Judah, and Rosie. They were all at the Bible school, and they were also, some of them were also missionary kids, so some went to Papua New Guinea, or they went to Venezuela. And then our session on Monday was taught by Greg most of the time. And he would talk, how do you say that? Like the main theme of Monday was about culture. So we learned about the cultures of the different tribes. And so Greg taught us a lot about the Yanomamo. That's where he went and he taught the Bible to. And their culture was really different from ours. They grew up with stuff that we had. Like they didn't know what electronics was. They didn't know what the planes were. They were really interested in the planes. And they had a lot of questions for Greg and his wife when they moved there because it was all really new to them, and they were really interested people, so they wanted to know what you were doing a lot. So something that was really unique, Greg told us about this. He said when Greg kissed his wife or they would do something affectionate, the Yanomama would get really confused because they didn't know what love was because they didn't even have the word in their language or their vocabulary, and it's because they didn't have the Bible, so they didn't know what love was, how to describe it, and so they would be like, why are you guys touching lips? Or they were all really confused about that, so they had to try and explain it to them and just try to make them less confused so they can start teaching, because they wanted them to get to know him before they taught the Bible. Greg would invite them into his house sometimes, and he'd tell them, oh yeah, you guys can sit down, like let's talk, you guys can sit down. They didn't know what chairs were, and they didn't know how to sit down, like they didn't know what to sit was, so they would get on the chair and they would just squat because they didn't know what to do. And he's like, no, you guys sit down. And they didn't understand him, so they just did it, and he's like, oh well, they'll figure it out eventually, we'll work on it. Let's see. Another thing that was really cool was they all slept in hammocks too. They didn't sleep on the floor, and they would set their hammocks up in triangles. So they would like form a triangle, and they would put a fire in it. And then once their family grew bigger than 3, they would just start a new triangle. They'd build a fire so everybody would stay warm. And then after our lessons, we kind of hung out and we did one of our really fun group activities, but can't tell you about that because there's younger kids who were there, hopefully go, because it was really fun, so can't tell you about that. And then we got to listen to Grace's testimony, and she's one of our interns. And it was really interesting because she grew up in Papua New Guinea, and her parents were missionaries there. And so she just kind of told us about like that and what her way to God was, how she got closer, kind of like her background. And it was just really cool because you compare a lot to it. Like sometimes I would think, oh yeah, they're missionary kids, like we don't compare it all to them, like they have their whole different way of learning things because they're somewhere different than us. But it was really cool because I actually compared to her a lot. And then we had our campfire session, and we learned more about the tribes, and we started to learn about the story of Jonah. And then we all needed to shower because we were all stinky from the plane, and the showers were freezing. I honestly thought I was going to die because it was so cold. I was like shivering, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna die here. Oh well. It's too cold, can't do it. And then we slept in our hammocks for the first time. That was pretty fun. Some of us fell out, but but it was pretty fun. And then I'm just gonna say this trip has brought me personally a lot closer to God and allowed me to connect more to Him. And then I hope a lot of these kids that are just starting into youth group, I hope Raleigh and Jordan decide to go back and take them because it was super, super fun. And that's it.
Hi, I'm Diesel Rasmussen, and I'm going to talk about Tuesday. The topic about Tuesday was language and Venezuela. That's how you say it, I think. So it was basically the whole day was a wreck from when I woke up to the end of the day. So when we woke up to go do our devotions and everything, I decided to wake up not really early, like somewhat early, with Joaquin to go take a morning shower. And from the last description from Emma about the showers being really cold, it's like that throughout the whole day. You can't find a time where oh, this is when the water's warm. We can go at this time. So it's cold all day, and the mornings were even colder. And most people wore shorts during the mornings because it's too early to get changed for the rest of the day. So me and Joaquin go down to the showers. I'm gonna talk a lot about this, sorry, hold on. Okay, so me and Joaquin went down to the showers and we started to, take our showers, and I hear Joaquin on the other side, like I could hear him shivering and in his breathing, I could hear him going which was really funny, but I couldn't give him crap about it because I was in the one next to him holding my breath so I didn't make the noise. And I was holding I was doing this as I was showering to keep myself warm. Oh gosh, I'm getting cold thinking about it. And anytime we would dunk our heads, my scalp and everything would just go numb, and I would touch my head. I'm so cold. And that was my morning. And then we would go down to do devotions, and we would have our Bible verse that we had to read about and describe what we thought about in the verse. And then the tribe we had to search up and the books. And then after devotions, we went and had breakfast. I don't remember what breakfast was. And then we had our morning lesson, and then we had our little break. Everyone loved 9 squares. And then I was the loser kid who didn't want to go play because I was awkward. And I didn't know what the game was, so I just, would go nah, I don't want to go play. You guys go on ahead. It was fun. And then everyone would come back for our second part of the lesson. And the whole lesson was basically talking about what it would be like to go in an airport that we didn't know the language to, Venezuelan. I have no idea. And some of them, it was fun. It was okay. So there's this whole trip. I'm not allowed to talk about it because it's fun and it's a surprise. Oh, man, the next kids that get to go are gonna have a whirl at that one. So, anyways, so basically, in summarize, that they taught us about how it can be difficult to know the language and how to understand it. So if you're going through all the stuff that you do for airport things, I don't know names of things, I'm sorry, but going through all the things with airports and security, I heard from the security details that I got from the missionaries, from Jordan and Mom, and from the Haiti trip, I heard it's a lot worse over in Haiti. There's more security guards, and there's big guns. It's hey, what you doing over here, man? You got your passport on you? So, and then they were talking about how it's difficult to learn the languages, and then how you could easily slip up a little details, when they were speaking their language and they would ask kids questions. I heard from Mackenzie that she got asked a question, and he was speaking in another language, of course, because he didn't know what he was saying. And he asked in the language, do you have drugs on you? And then Kenzie told me, she was like, yeah, of course, yes. Mm-hmm. And then she got kicked out. So that was the best story ever. And they got a lot of kids with that. Literally just asking random questions, speaking as fast as they can so they can't understand you. And they're did you have drugs on you? Yes. Mm-hmm. They just have a big smile on their face, yeah, uh-huh. Trying to pretend they know what they're talking about. So that was fun. But yeah, it can be hectic. What I learned from that trip is that it's if you're gonna go somewhere and you plan on staying there, learn your facts. Get the language down, know what happens around the area. You need to know before you go, because you will say yes to drugs when you're not trying to. And then there was Greg told us a story about his trip, and then do you guys remember the other guy's name? Steve. How did I forget that name? Anyways, so Steve and Greg and another lady, I don't remember her name or what she talked about, but Steve was talking about how he was in Venezuela and he had to go do something for his passport. I don't remember what the thing was, but he had to go do something with his passport, so he took it down to the office and everything, gave the passport to the lady behind the counter, and gave it to her, and he had to wait till like a few hours until like the end of the day or something to get his passport back. So he just walked out of the office and was frolicking around, doing what I'm supposed to. I gave my ticket to that lady. She was so nice. Anyways, so he went around, got some food and just waiting, and some cops, it was the cops, right? The cops walked up to him and asked, where's your passport? Or do you have a little ticket slip thing to prove that you're there and not sneaking in or anything? So he was like, oh shoot, I don't have my passport with me. I might have the ticket. No, he just walked out of the place without his ticket, saying that I have my passport, it's just getting stuff done to it right now. So it looked like he was just there illegally, just frolicking and having food. Sorry. So then after he was taken to jail. Was he the one that was put in the big cell? Yeah, with a bunch of other people. Yeah, so he was put in a big cell with a bunch of other people, and he had to wait there for just one day. Oh, was Greg the week who had to wait there like a long time? Okay, wait. Okay, so I have the story all mixed up in my head. But not big details. It's fine. So he was there for like a day, waiting in a prison with other people around him, and then that's all I can remember from that story. I'm sorry. I didn't write things down because I have terrible handwriting. I couldn't read it anyways. And then Greg was talking about his story about how he was going to go on this trip to a village. I think it was his village or another village. So the trip to get to that village is 5 days on water. And then his passport expired that day, I believe. It was that day his passport was done. And then he went up to the missions office and everything was like, hey, I need a new passport, and because it's expired. And they're like, no, you're fine. You're Greg. Everyone knows who you are. You're fine. You don't need one. So he was like, okay. So then they went to the spot where they need to start on their trip to get to the village. And then the police show up. They're like, I need to see everyone's passports. The timing of it, when he told me the story, I was like, wow, dude, it's kind of like God is like, hey, you need your passport, man. Why are you walking out of this office? And he was like, hey, cops, I think he doesn't have his passport. So then they were showing off the passports, and Greg was like, let's put the other two first, and then maybe he wouldn't have to check mine. He'd be like, okay, obviously everyone has a passport, the other two do. So he's going through checking the passports. Yes. And then he gets to Greg's and he's like, yours is expired. And Greg's like, yeah, it happened this morning, but the lady at the office said it was fine. It's like, passport's expired. You got another passport on you? Like, no, officer. So then they were waiting there for a little bit, and then Greg was like, okay, you two just go, because they needed to get to this village for like the new supplies and stuff, I think. So he just told those two to go, and that he'll catch up by helicopter or plane. And they waited there, and then they got in the little Jeep that they drove there, and they went down to the police station, and Greg thought he was just gonna, sit in the office in like his little chair and wait around. But no, they were putting him in a jail cell, because they're so nice, giving you a room and everything. You don't even have to pay for it. So they start walking down this hall he was talking about, and he was walking past many like cells, and then in front of him there was like this big cage, the one that Steve was locked up in with a whole bunch of other people around him. So he looked at it and was like, I don't want to go in there. I don't want to be standing next to those men. That guy's huge. He can crush me. That's what I thought. Sorry. I'm just adding in things. So, and then they walked up, but they stopped and opened up a little cell that he had. He had his own little cell, which was amazing. The chances of that, I was really hoping he was gonna go in the big cage when he was telling the story. Like he was leading up to like surprise, it's the big cage, but plot twist. He has his own VIP room with no food and no bed. VIP, that's what I'm talking about. So, and then, you know, he was waiting there for a bit. He wanted to call people, like the missions office, so he can like get out, because he was just an expired passport and everything. So I think that's about it. That's where the story ends in my head. Thank you.
Alright. Hi guys, I'm Kaya. So one of our kids couldn't make it today, so I have to cover Wednesday and Thursday. What was Wednesday? Okay, so Wednesday we went on, it was the same schedule. We woke up, did our devotionals, had our first lesson, had our breakfast, then had Bible theme, lunch, and then we went on a 3-mile hike, which sounds easy. It would have been fairly easy if it wasn't super rocky and super uneven. We were constantly going uphill and downhill and just left and right. It was all over the place, but I can't remember how many waterfalls were on the trail, but there were a ton, and they were like gorgeous. I think the biggest one was like 94 feet or something. So it was definitely worth it. We had a little allergy scare, so that was really fun. We had to book it to a gas station and pick up some Benadryl because I was suffocating. It was fun. We were out of breath by the end of it. I think Brawley and Jordan turned it into a date more than a hike because they were back there. We were sitting there waiting for them to go back to camp, and everybody had come up, and we had just started seeing them come up. So it was a while, but they had fun. We had fun too. It was a lot of fun. I think Adam had a lot of fun because he was talking about Star Wars with one of the leaders the whole entire hike. Like every time I'd walk up to him, he was still talking about Star Wars, and I was like, I think I'm just gonna go back. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a completely different language. And then Thursday we had, I can't remember, the team games. Our church was not meant for the team games. We won, we definitely won, but we are a little bit too competitive at this church because we were constantly yelling at each other, and sometimes there were some lovely words that were not profanities or anything, but sometimes we were really expressing our love for each other. So our first game, we had to put one of the teammates on a stretcher and navigate a course while the people that were holding the stretcher up were blindfolded. And the only person that could tell them where to go was the one in the stretcher. So I think we completed that like 5 times, like good. And then we were almost out of time, and we were yelling at each other. We're like, we can get one more in, we can get one more in. So we had this brilliant idea to put 2 people on one stretcher. The boys were sore by the end of this. We did use our lightest people, but that's still like 200 pounds. So it was a lot. But the boys, they did it. They were troopers. Joaquin and Ethan and Diesel and Griffin, they're some strong guys, man. And then, yeah, so we finished that right when they were telling us to leave. And so we made a ton of points in that one game alone. And I think we probably made the most points out of all the teams on that one game. The second game we didn't do so good at all. We hated it so much. We had these 2 long planks which had ropes attached to them, and we had to, I think, have 5 people per 2 planks, right? And there was 2 sets of these planks, and you had to have like 1 foot on each plank. And we had to go from one cone to the next cone. We did not stop yelling that whole time. Even Brawley was yelling that time. She was like, what are you guys doing? Just navigate it. And we're like, oh, we can. It was hard. I think the ones that got the most frustrated were the boys. Hagen was livid. Because they would try to like yell out left, right, and it never worked out because one person would be like having their foot still on the plank, the next would be using the wrong foot. We only finished that like twice. at most. And then our third game was the water game, right? Oh, the alligator game. No, we didn't finish that a single time. We didn't finish that once. So we had pallets along the ground, and they were all a different length from each other. And we had this long red plank, and we had to try to navigate around this thing to the last one. And the plank only reached some of the pallets. It didn't go around all of them. So we had to figure out which path we were supposed to take. And the pallets had numbers on them too. The numbers really threw us off because they didn't help at all. They were completely false. Hi, Diesel. Okay. And then I think Joaquin was livid that time. He was the one that was yelling at everybody. Him and Ethan were not getting along in that game. And then we were trying to get to the end. We got everybody to the end except for one person. I don't remember who that one person was. And then that one person fell off. But in order to get all the points, you had to go there and get back. And we only got halfway back and they told us to switch. And then we all threw a big fit. We're like, we didn't even finish that a single time. What are you guys doing? Even though we were all to blame because none of us were on our A game during that thing. And then the third game we dominated. Me and Griffin felt like old men after that, but we did do it. So we had to stand down at their little, I guess it was like a watering hole, but it was really just like a stream, a big stream. We had buckets, and some of them had holes in them, so we had to figure out which ones we could and couldn't use. And we had to make a big old line to this barrel. I don't know what it was a barrel, basically. And the barrel also had holes in it, so we had to have someone stand there and plug the holes so that the water could fill up. And we did that game so well. Griffin was at the stream, and I was second, trying to get from like here to up here. So me and Griff were pretty sore. And I think we did that 3 times, and then we finally switched because I personally could not handle it. Griffin could not handle the pain, so we switched. And then after that, we did it in like 3 minutes, 2 minutes or something. Like, we did it pretty fast, and we had to fill it all the way to the top. And then we'd have to empty it out again, but we didn't have to like use buckets or anything because there was a little nozzle that you could just slit and then the water would come out, and it didn't take very long. And so then we decided to do girls against boys. That was interesting. That was really competitive. The boys kind of had that against us though. They held that against us for the rest of camp because they won by like 1/4 of a barrel. Yes. Yeah, but it was extremely exciting, very competitive, yelling at each other that whole entire time. Really let us bond with each other though, despite wanting to, just sock each other in the face. And then we went into the tab to have a lesson about, it was a culture lesson, and they were showing us the percentages of the people that had been reached, and then the percentages of the unreached people groups. And then after all of that, they decided to tell us who won. And I think first they said who got last place. That wasn't very nice, but they did it. And then they did second place. It was really weird. They did first, second, and then when they said third, and it wasn't our team, we threw a party. I think our heads were like hitting the roof, and like the camp leaders were just sitting there like, what is wrong with this church? Because we were all thinking that we were gonna get disqualified for bad sportsmanship because we had been yelling at each other and screaming at the top of our lungs. And like even some of the camp counselors were like, you guys need to calm your church down. And we're like, I don't think we can. So it was a lot of fun, but we definitely threw a party when we found out that we had won the games. So that was tons of fun. Bye.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Baskew, and I'm going to talk about the fireside messages we had and what we learned. In our first fireside session, we started by singing the song, I've Decided to Follow Jesus, in English and in Yanomamo, which is one of the tribes we learned about, which was really cool to see how other people worship God. For the fireside messages, we talked about Jonah. We talked about how Jonah didn't want go tell the people of Nevanim that God was going to destroy their city. I've been practicing that word for the past 2 days and I still cannot get it right. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Jonah ran away from God in the opposite direction of the city, and he got on a ship. God sent a storm over the sea, causing the whole crew to fear until they realized God was angry and he needed to throw Jonah overboard into the sea. So the men prayed to Jonah's God and threw him into the sea, where he got swallowed by a great fish. He was in the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. After Jonah gets out of the fish, he is once again told by God to go to Nevin. Oh my gosh. But this time he goes. Once he tells the city God's message, they repent to God and turn from their wicked ways, hoping to have their city not destroyed. So God saw that they changed and decided not to destroy their city. This story shows that what missions and missionaries can really do to change people's lives. People can't live for God when they haven't even heard about him, but once they do, their lives will be changed forever and save them. The rest of the message was about how Jonah was mad at God for saving the people and not destroying them. God explained to Jonah that he made everyone in the world, so he longs to save those that don't know him, and he cares about them. God died for every tribe, language, people, and nation, so they all can be saved. So it's our job to spread the gospel about him. Another thing I pulled out of this message was that when God has a calling on your life, you better go or you end up in a big fish.
Okay, I got the Bible sessions. Yummy. Okay, the first session was the creation, the fall, and the promise of a Savior. So the first thing that he told us was with "Let there be light." He said, I haven't really caught on to this before, but this implies that God made the light before the light sources. That's what I got out of that part. And then in chapter 1, verse 16 is talking about how he made the sun, the moon, and the stars. And it just says he made the stars also. The biggest understatement in the history of understatement. And that's because with what the telescopes can see, there's a bunch of you can see all the stars, but then with the clusters of stars, there's a bunch of black spots, and in those black spots, there's more stars and more black spots, which means more stars and more black spots. Anyway, then it went to the fall of man, and I didn't really catch anything special in that. I just heard it like I normally did. And the next thing he said was in verse 3:15, chapter 3, verse 15, and that says, "And I will cause hostility between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head and you will strike his heel." This is the first promise of the Savior, talking about Jesus. And that's the first session. The second session was Noah, the Tower of Babel, and the dispersion. And Noah and the Tower of Babel were the same as always, as far as I recall. But with the dispersion, he said that while God just spread the people out, he didn't just spread them out and say, do it yourself. There you go, have fun surviving. He spread them out with the knowledge of how to survive in the environment. For example, like Greg said, that he put the Yanomamo in that place with the knowledge of how to find food. Like there was this root or something that they used to make a bread, and the root was poisonous. So they had to squeeze the poison out of it. And when Greg asked them how they knew how to do that, they said they don't know. They didn't know how they knew to do that. They just knew. So that goes to the third session, which talked about Isaac, Jacob, and Jesus. He was just talking about how they reacted to the story of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. They had come to the conclusion that God wasn't going to let Abraham kill Isaac, and that he was going to provide the lamb without him going to that part of the story. So I thought that was kind of cool that they figured that out. So while talking about Jesus, he was talking about how he came from the tribe of Judah, which is one of Joseph's brothers, from the story of Joseph and the Coat of Many Colors, I think, where Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery in Egypt. And somewhere in that session, he was talking about how Moses had to put up that bronze snake on the pole to save the Israelites. He was talking about the cross, I think, as well with that. And he was talking about how the bronze snake is sort of like the cross, where the people had to look to it to get saved. But for the people, it's from the poison. For us, it's from sin. And something else I wrote down was, I don't know why I wrote this down, but I wrote that believing in Jesus is kind of like the ark, because you're getting on the boat to be saved. So believing in Jesus saves you from sin, and getting on the ark saved them from the water. So in session 4 was the death and resurrection. The only thing I wrote down that I found interesting was the angels were speaking in past tense, saying like, 1 second, let me go to it. The angel was saying, I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come see where his body was laying. So in that time, they were speaking in past tense.
I'm Jolie, and I'm going to be speaking about like missionaries and kind of what they do. So I have a new respect for missionaries from this trip. So like how many years it takes to like finally preach the gospel to them. It takes like 20 years. But they were telling us about a group of people who did it in 8, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then all the school they have to go through. Yeah, that's a lot. And then to like learn their language and then speak it, like that would be hard to learn a new language, I feel like. And then to learn their culture, because our culture is way different than theirs. And then to teach them how to read and write and then make a new alphabet for them. That sounds really hard. And then after all of that, to finally like teach the gospel to them. That's pretty much all I have.
I'll try to keep it short here. I was told to talk about a personal moment I've had and something I've learned on the mission. So, the last mission trip that the youth group went on was to Haiti, and they went to an area where Christianity was. There was Christianity there, right? You guys went to church with them. You were singing songs with them. It was mostly work there, but the missionaries who had went to like places like forests in Venezuela and like places in Papua New Guinea, they went to a place where they believed that spirits were from like dead people, and the sickness was spirits. I was redundant. They believed that like sickness came from spirits of dead people that like are cursing people. They didn't even say anybody's name who was dead because it was cursed or something. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, it takes about 20 years to translate a full Bible, and you need to translate the full Bible in order to teach them, so that they have the whole thing. I mean, it's just like the game of telephone. The more you pass on stories, the more mixed up they get as you go along. It gets pretty confusing. They have stories from their past that some of them don't even remember the whole thing. But a personal moment I had was, I don't know, me and Jordan. I never really talked to Jordan very much. He always seemed kind of gruff and like mean. I was kind of scared of him. But we started talking is because I spoke up at one of our Bible studies saying I wasn't hanging out with a few right kids at school. Like one of my friends is a Satanist who doesn't believe that Satan exists. I don't know. But I start saying that I'm not hanging out with the right people. Like 30% of my friends aren't even Christian. They don't even believe in God. But he was telling me that he didn't really hang out with good people either, but he changed. He's a police officer now. Some of his friends, when they meet up again, when he says that he's a cop, they're like, "You're a what now?" Because they don't believe it. But I'm Sorry to put you on the spot there, Jordan. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I got for you today.
All right, so I guess I'm sharing a personal story too as well, and I guess how God was at work in my life. So I guess I'll start with about 7th or 8th grade. I started that's about when I started taking my faith in Christ seriously. This is when you could say I started having my own faith, and I wasn't just going off my parents. I started reading my Bible more and more myself. I liked learning about Mormonism and Christianity and what the differences were. This was due to the fact that I have a lot of Mormon friends. I still do today, and they consider themselves Christians, but they're not, and so they're gonna go to hell ultimately. And so I like talking with them and letting them know, you know. And so I remember back in 9th grade, I was at a football camp at ISU. And it was past 10, it was bedtime and everything. And I was rooming with one of my best friends. And we were talking, and I remember telling him how that as Christians, we're saved by grace through faith and not by works. And he went on to tell me that faith without works is dead. And it says that in James. And I didn't know what to say to that. And that's probably one of my biggest regrets to this day. I mean, knowing what I know now, like in Ephesians, Paul is writing about salvation and that we are saved by grace through faith and not by works. And that in James, when he says that faith without works is dead, he's talking about the sanctification process, and that how we are supposed to be changed as being a Christian. So knowing what I know now, I think things could have gone a lot differently there. So back to how this connects with Wyoming. So back in the spring when the graduates came up, I told you guys I was thinking of attending either ISU or University of Jamestown this fall. And a big reason I hadn't decided yet was because I was waiting for ISU to send me some information. And they finally sent it about a day or two before we left for Wyoming. So I got to look at it, but I didn't really do anything with it. My dad was always asking me, so what are you doing this fall? Where are you going? And all that. And I kind of just put it off. I guess going to Wyoming, I didn't know what to expect. We were told we were going to Pennsylvania. We were told what to bring, the travel itinerary. I didn't know we would learn about college or anything. So I wasn't expecting to learn anything about colleges. And I guess at Wyoming they were telling us about Ethnos 360 Bible Institute. And it's a Bible school. Tori and Nara went to it. A couple other missionaries from his church. And they were talking about ABI. I mean, they were kind of pushing it just because they are a missions-based organization and all. I've always felt like I want to do something for the kingdom of God. But I don't know what. I remember in high school, I stay up late doing my homework because I'm a procrastinator, so I wait a lot. And there was times I was overwhelmed, and I was thinking, what if I could just learn about the Bible and God, and not have to worry about any of these other classes? Because I was taking Christian Ed, and I love learning that. We've gone through apologetics, hermeneutics. You learn how to read the Bible, how to keep things in context and everything. And so I love learning about it. And so when they were talking about EBI and you get to go and you learn about the Bible. You don't have to worry about math classes, English classes, anything like that. I was like, this was kind of what I was looking for, And so since Wyoming, I've been looking into EBI and thinking about going there. I've applied. We'll see if we get in, Yeah, I mean, it's 2 years. You get to learn about the Bible, about God, be with Christians. I'll tell you, the interns at Wyoming, they're 19. They're a year older than me. I'll tell you, they're pretty cool. I mean, listening to their testimonies and everything. I mean, like at the high school, I'm pretty popular. More than half the school knows me. But at the same time, I felt like an outcast because I'm a Christian. Everyone else is Mormon and everything. In my grade, I didn't really have any Christian friends or anything. It's just because they're all Mormon or they're partiers, if you want to be honest. So yeah, I never really got too close. I mean, some of my closest friends moved away and everything. So yeah, that's where I was. So yeah, now I'm thinking about going to EBI, and we'll see where God takes me from there.
when we are weak. Today we trust, we overcome. Take every chain that kept us slaves and throw them off. We're not waiting for permission. We defy our inhibition. Like our middle name is fearless, unafraid. If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, unstoppable. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions. We walk as lions. Today is ours. It's always been. Before we face the fight, we know who's gonna win. We live by faith and not by sight. We don't want safe and quiet. We don't want to run and hide. This is not an intermission. It's our time, not gonna miss it. You've already called us fearless, unafraid. If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, unstoppable. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions. We walk as lions. Everywhere we go, the battle has been won. We know you've gone before us, so we're taking hold in faith. With every step we take, we know we'll rise victorious. If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, unstoppable. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions. We walk as lions. Every journey needs a first step to start, and every fire grows from a single spark. The great symphony begins with just one note, and one voice can give the whole world hope. It's no impossible, nothing we can't face. Tallest mountains are moved by the seed of faith. Come together, don't you know that you're not alone? We will rise up for the kingdom come. Lay down our lives for the sake of love. If God's with us, we know that nothing's gonna stop us. Nothing's gonna stop us. He's called you
All right, I'll make this real quick. I know that treats are calling your names down there, so we'll hustle through this. First thing I just want to talk about, though, number one, thank you to this church for you guys' prayer. The gruff guy that Hagen talks about. Every time I get up here, I want to tear up when I talk, but I don't know how he thinks that's gruff. Anyhow, the financial support that you guys did, but the prayer, the extra prayer as we were traveling, let me tell you, at first I thought, boy, this is going to be a hassle, you know, staying the night in a hotel, all that. That was kind of an answer to prayer. Kids did awesome. The bonding that happened there, they're racing up and down the escalators, stuff like that. It was good. TSA actually did awesome. I think Idaho represented well. Nobody was wearing masks. Nobody even cared because we were just having a good time. But no, it was a great time. Kids did great, and it was a huge bonding time for them. Actually, it was pretty cool. The financial support that our church gave just in that short amount of time to get us there, you guys did phenomenal. I know we were authorized extra money out of another fund to take. Didn't even have to touch that because of your guys' support. So just thank you guys. I could talk a lot about Wyoming. I'm not going to. The kids touched on a lot of things there. Just watched a lot of growth in a lot of the kids. Had some great conversations with some of those kids while we were there, and just to watch God working in their lives. I know a lot of what we touched on so far was the fun stuff and things like that, but I'm here to tell you the growth in some of those kids. It was amazing. You know, prior to going to this trip, we did some things to prep as far as, you know, talking about missions, you know, and going through like Matthew, you know, the Great Commission, 18 through 20, and just going out into the world, you know, to every nation. And then watching these kids grow and listening to some of them think about missions and actually having that as a possibility in their life. You know, and I won't say that they were necessarily from our church, but I will say that, you know, I'd heard, and other advisors had heard it as well, that, you know, kids were excited and they were thinking about missions, but they were nervous to go back and tell their parents that that's something that they had thought about. You know, and I just thought in my own mind, I was like, man, if my little girl come to me and talked about going to a world that a little scary, you know, whatever that might be, my son, you know, things that, you know, it's a breakaway from the natural living the American dream. Go out and, you know, get a job, get a house, get in debt, you know, all those things. It's just a breakaway from that. So proud of this church for getting behind our kids. And just continue to do that. Just be in prayer for these kids. Lots of cool things happening there. So just want to thank you guys again. What an amazing group, body of believers that we have, and just continue to stay in prayer for these kids. So thank you guys.